We're live.
Hockey Nation fans, welcome back to the Hockey Nation live show with Coach Frenchy and the Boo. And of course, we have to go all the way to the West Coast, California, to find out Michael Divellano. Welcome, Michael. Happy Friday.
Thank goodness.
Friday already.
Doesn't
Thanksgiving.
really matter much, but whatever. It's
Thanksgiving next week.
oh my God! Unfortunately, yeah. What are we gonna do? We can't go anywhere.
5 weeks from 2021, and we are almost in the jail half of the country right now, but we'll see what's happening. Unfortunately, not many things going on around the league, a couple of things, but I think first one I want to mention to you, we talked about the World Cup yesterday, junior from Canada, everything like that, and we want to mention about the news from the Los Angeles Kings announced their first pick or round pick. Well, first round, and 2020, the Blichfeld won't join the Kings until the end of the World Championship Junior.
Makes sense. I mean, I think that they're probably carrying a lot of guys on an expanded roster this year. So for the young guys, they're not going to have as many games in junior. This is a premier event. They're going to be able to play against the best talent, and NHL GMs are probably looking for any opportunity to keep them playing at a high level. I think this is going to be a rough year for development. So I think they're just looking at that and thinking, you're not going to be able to go to junior. Like, they're not going to send them to Sudbury, especially if they don't know how many games they're going to play or if they're going to play, anything. You would think Sudbury would play, but because especially with COVID, there's no COVID in Sudbury apparently.
Yeah.
But there's got to be other teams in the league, so I think it's smart. He has nothing to prove in the OHL. He can't play in the AHL. Send him to World Juniors and then bring him to the pros and start his apprenticeship.
You're right. I think the situation with OHL and all the CHL leagues right now, and you don't know what's going to happening for other leagues around the world, everything like that. So I think everybody's on the pose. So if the kid have a chance to play many games right now, I think that's the right things to do. He's not going to be the only one. I think a few of them is going to be the same ways. Let him play until beginning of January, and then I'll see if they're going to go back in their league or they're going to stay with the team. But I would not be surprised. Some of them is going to be whatever they don't play, they would maybe keep them around to practice, everything like that. I wouldn't. So,
I mean, there's 50 players in Canada's bubble already. So they have 50 days and they have 2 teams. And we already saw the roster yesterday. It's insane. Like, they could field 2 teams. So I think you see, first of all, everybody talks about USA Hockey and the depth. However, no other team in the world or country can field 2 teams like Canada could. Usually the best players go to the NHL. So you've got to anticipate this is going to be a very good World Juniors. Russia's great.
The second thing about that part is also the fact, because you have no hockey, some of them maybe play with that team because the reason NHL does not play or other team is not playing nowhere, so they have a chance and opportunity to play. If not, maybe 2 or 3 of them could play NHL or be close to be a part of the NHL at that time of the year. So
you think of the other guy that you would expect to hear something about is Alex Turcotte.
Yeah.
I mean, so you would think logically Turcotte should be pro this year. So that's 2 Kings. They probably have others. I think you're just going to see this trend. I mean, I think you'll see it. I think the smartest team right now is Detroit. Detroit's sending all their guys to Europe. They're going to play there. They're young guys that, hopefully are getting some ice. And then, you might see Moritz Seider in the World Juniors.
Yep. Talking about Europe and everything like that, we have yesterday a news from Toronto Maple Leafs where they announced Mikko Lehtonen.
Yeah.
He's mutual agreed to terminate his contract with Jokerit Helsinki of the KHL team. It would be today, so it would be a chance to see Lehtonen maybe a part of the Maple Leaf Toronto next year. Try to make the team, honestly. I think it's a good move for I'm sure it's good for Toronto to have him chance to make the team. So we'll see. Could happen there.
So he was with Jokerit?
He was with Okeri. Yeah.
So I'm confused which Lettinen this is because there's a couple, right? Is he the forward?
I think he's a defenseman. I could be wrong.
Because there's a couple defensemen named Mikko Lettinen. I always get confused. So there's a 94 defenseman. Yeah, that's who it is.
Yeah.
So it's the 94. He's 5'11", 195.
Remember, he has he dealt with the COVID last month also.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. So it was a mile case, but still.
He's like a point a game with Jokerit as a defenseman. So it'd be interesting to see if he can have an impact. I mean, they might. That's an example of a pretty shrewd move if it works out.
But that's not one what Toronto does. Toronto did a couple of things like that the last couple of years. They always bring one or two from KHL, try to get there. He's going to join, Brody, Bukosians, and then, Justin Old and Rasmussen then and Travis Dermott to find, fill for the spot. That's what he's going to compete against those guys over there. So we're going to be very interesting what could happen.
Yeah. And they also made a similar move last year with Mahalik. Is it Mahalik? Is that his name is? And he turned out very well. And now you've signed Barbanov with hopes that he'll turn out. So it's interesting way to try to fill in the bottom end of your roster, the guys that could flex up maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting about that. And then the funny thing about this is like he cannot wear number 44, by the way. So.
He cannot wear what?
Number 44.
Who is 44? Riley?
Yeah.
Does he want to wear 44?
I'm sure he didn't ask. I'm sure he's 46. He's going to be wearing number 46.
45.
46 next year.
45A.
So, yeah. So that's what's happening. Talking about Toronto Maple Leafs, it was funny because they asked Kyle Dubas about possibility if he would like to have find a cap space to get Zeno Chara.
Why wouldn't he?
So he, would be very interesting if you think he will. I'm sure he could be an ad. It would be good for Boston to have him.
I don't know. I mean, players' sentiment changes all the time. They're loading up on veteran guys to make a run. If you're just Chara, you probably look at Toronto and go, man, I could be a difference maker. They've already loaded up on some veteran guys that really want to, solidify the culture. They got high-end talent. They just don't understand what it takes to win. You put a beast, like a literal beast like Chara, the guy's phenomenal shape. He will show up 6'9", 270-pound giant, and he will demand, like he did in Boston, from everybody that they play to a certain level. He could have a real impact there. Maybe you're Zdeno Chara and you go, this team is way closer to a cup than Boston.
Yeah, but again, at that age, Michael, it's about family, right? It's about
who cares? Family. The guy's got a legacy.
The family. Maybe his family doesn't want to move. Maybe he doesn't want to
sacrifice for the guy. He's like 43, 44. He's got 1 year left, Pierre.
But again, his wife said he wanted to move all the kids for 1 year.
Stay in Boston.
Yeah, man. So that's
like that. Especially a shortened year.
I don't see Ray Book, it was a different case, right? Book was almost at the end, and also it was the middle of the year, and he can sacrifice a couple of months. On the situation, Chara has been an icon for Boston. If he wants to play, he wants to play hockey this year. I don't see why he will change the team just because he have a chance to win, and he's always been a great hockey player for Boston Bruins, and why
would he play with Boston if they have no chance to win the cup?
It's because they was the best team in the NHL last season.
But they won't be this year.
But again, they will not be the worst. You know what I mean? Like, if you was with the Ottawa, Detroit, or San Jose, or whatever they are, now you can kind of reconsider that. But we be with Boston, play with Marchand and Pastrnak. They have built that kind of relationship, everything like that.
Yeah, I think it's 50-50 at this point, because I think that if you're a discerning person, you go, Toronto legitimately has made moves to try and bring in veteran guys. They already have a ton of young talent. You're seeing these other moves. They're aggressive. They want a one and done, right? Because after this, if they don't win the cup, they're going to blow it up. I mean, I'd be very surprised if they didn't. But maybe it's not blow it up. They'll probably, think about what they do with Tavares. But if you're Chara, like he started in Ottawa, he played in New York. It's not like the only team he's played for is Boston.
Yeah. Well, again, we'll see what happened over there. I think the problem about Toronto right now, before they ask a Chara, everything like that, they have to figure out their own salary cap anyway.
They'll figure it out.
You know what I mean? They have to find that part over there. And I don't see Chara will add something more what they are already with Thornton.
I think he would add a huge amount. I think he'd be a huge difference maker there. He's not, he is very impactful, number one in the dressing room. Like, by all accounts,
like pretty much what he can do there right now is on the dressing room.
No, he can do more. He's still a difficult player to play against. People are afraid of him.
Yeah, but why do you use him and put him like 12 minutes per game, 15 minutes per 12, 13 minutes? Why he will accept to be a defense number 5 and 6?
He's going to do that in Boston anyway.
No, because Boston don't have that kind of quality on the left side right now. They have nobody. Crook is gone, so he's going to be number 4 over there on the left side with McEnvoy or the big guy.
Carlo.
Yeah, Carlo. Carlo in my head there was Carlo.
You think they have nothing? I don't know. It seems.
Yeah, nothing defensive.
I would be very surprised if he doesn't if they offered him, I would be very shocked if he didn't seriously consider it.
We'll see. It's a subject about that one over there. We'll see what could happen. And then, it's a really, really surprise to the sadness day yesterday is about the players was really upset about the offering, the fact like the players feel like they have given enough. And Alan Walsh, the agent, said they are thinking right now they're not going to start the season at the beginning of January because there's conversation between the players and the owners, something like that. So it'll be really interesting what this will go to turn around. I feel like it's a situation. If they want to play hockey, they have to settle down their demanding or expect a lot. Because I don't think so will happening. The one side you have owners don't want to, create more blood of what they have already did last season. They want to give more. And then, I understand they already asked them a proposition before, and they said everybody was, I agree with that part, but now they feel like they're going to lose more money to anything else for the next season. The player does not want to give now. They already gave back, but at the end of the day,
give to who? Like they're the air. Your money is pegged to a percentage of revenue, right? Like if you're either a partnership, which is what you tried to strike as an NHLPA, you pegged your revenue as players to the revenue of the teams because you wanted to benefit from that. Yes, you have individual contracts in that concept, and they have a hard cap, so I get that. But at the same time, like, you're either a partner or you aren't.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to play.
At the end of the day, it's not like a renegotiation about a contract agreement for 5-10 years between players and owners. Right? Exactly. So it's not like a negotiation where, we don't give you this, it's not go straight, and that's it, right? It's just right now to find a way to have an agreement for everybody, don't lose too much, and be sure the player accept the deal about that part of that. Yeah. But again, on the 750 players, I'm sure some of them are hungry to be sure they can play because their revenues, Like if you play 5 years, Michael, and I don't know, whatever you have, only 1 million per year, right? And now this year you're not going to play. At the end of the day,
you gotta play for those low end guys. It's funny you say that because I was thinking this. I'm like, listen, there's a definite divide because of the hard cap and the performance of players between top 6 and bottom 6 on all teams. And if you looked at the divide in salaries, the difference between being third and fourth line and second and first is significant. So I feel like if they really were worried, they would say, listen, pay the low end guys no matter what, or pay them 75%, pay us 65%. And get some other concession, or so that there's upside. It goes to the top end players. Like that would make a lot more sense, because the difference between a guy making $750 and $7 million, okay, 60% of one is $400,000 versus $4 million. Big difference.
Absolutely, exactly. You know what I mean? Like if you lose $1 million, you have your salary 1.5. Or $1 million. Now you find zero. The guy had $9 million. At the end of the day, you know what I mean? He'll be there for 10 years, 12 years, going to make, $50 million in his career versus 60. He's not going to be changing his rest of his life, right? But the one's getting maybe $5 million, and I'll drop maybe at $3 million, whatever it is. That's those guys, I think, the third line, fourth line, and those guys. And, I think that's the sadness about that. But again,
listen, in the end, hockey players are the most reasonable athletes, and they understand, they make sacrifices probably like any other sport. So, the flip side to it is not to criticize the players. I get where they're coming from. It's a negotiation stance, but there's obviously risk and everything. And, they shouldn't just give in. They should negotiate and push it. And that's why they have guys like Alan Walsh that are their advocates. So that's good. Donald Fair is quiet, right? Like he's not like a guy out there trying to get a lot of publicity. I don't think anybody's out there like banging the drum. And if you look historically, what do you think of when you think of stoppages? You think strike, right? The players have never struck. Every time we've had a stoppage, we think it's the players, but it's actually the owners. The owners have locked out the players multiple times. So I get what the players are saying, listen, but it is a risk, The teams could say, hey, we're not going to play, or the bottom 10 teams could say, I can't play. Exactly.
Finishing before we jump on the San Jose Sharks today as a preview team this year today. The St. John Sea Dog have recorded a positive COVID-19 test among the staff and the management, and are suspending team and for right now for activities. The Capricorn Eagles are also won't be compete until the investigation of the public health official from the maritime area for the QM right now, the team. Because there was the only area in this league, QM, they was playing because they have give a chance to play. Now they stop, and then everybody on the red zone over there. So it's going to see what's going to happen now for the QM for the next couple of weeks. The organizers are kind of showcase, bubbles, stuff like that, but we'll see what happening over there about that. The next news is during that time, the Vickovice ELH have signed a forward Evan. Remember this kid, this name, Evan. That's his name. To a contract for that season. Evan spent last season with the Cape Breton Eagles, putting up 11 goals, 11 assists, and 62 games. I remember when we talk about the draft, they had I was talking about funny name in the draft. It was West Blatt, and then it was this one, Evan. So he's only 19 years old, so he decided to go back to play for HC. So it would be interesting about him to do that.
That's definitely a crazy name.
Yeah, man, Evan, like back to back. So maybe one of the best name in the sport.
Probably. Pretty good. I like that. That's funny.
That's funny one for sure about that. So that's pretty much what's happening. So we're going to move on to the history, the flashback. I have a couple of things for you before we start. We're gonna have a new music for that one. NHL flashback. Do you know this?
Nice.
You remember that one?
No.
No? Oh.
What is it?
Wednesday night hockey NBC.
Oh, really?
Many years ago, like 20 years, 15 years ago. So, yep. So that's the one over there. So what's going on today? If you are a head coach in hockey, just be careful. If you pass November 20, you're going to be fine for the rest of the year. Because that day, November 20, check what's happening. First of all, 1 year ago, one team fired one coach. If you remember which team is it and who is the coach?
Last year, there's a ton of coaches fired.
I know. But it was maybe the first one.
The first one? Probably Peter DeBoer?
No.
Gerard Gallant?
No. Mike Babcock.
Oh, yeah. He was like 20 games in, right?
Yeah, exactly. Replaced by Sheldon O'Keefe. O'Keefe. 2 years ago, I want to know which team fired this coach, and it was Ken Hitchcock. Became the coach. So I want to know who's the team and who was the coach.
Edmonton Oilers, they fired Todd McClellan, and they hired Ken Hitchcock.
On this date, 20 years ago, the Montreal Canadiens fired who?
20 years ago?
Yep.
What's the 2000?
Yep.
Guy Carbonneau?
Alain Vigneault.
Oh, could have been any of those guys.
Replaced by who? Who took his place?
Terrian?
Yep. His buddy.
Who's now co-coach?
I know. In 1999, Steve Eisenman scored his 1,500 career point.
Wow.
21 years ago. Yep. Who scored the first goal of someone was born in Ohio for the Blue Jackets in 2003?
Born in Ohio?
Yep. And scored for the Blue Jackets.
The name RJ Umberger comes to mind?
Yep. Dan Frische.
That's so funny because I was with Mark Fritchie on the weekend in Phoenix.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
And 1999, the Washington Caps played their 12th consecutive game without allowing a power play goal, setting an NHL record. I'm surprised. 12, and I thought for me it could be more.
Yeah.
I was expecting like more.
12 games without a power play goal. That's crazy.
I know. 1988, the Blackhawks retired 2 jerseys, and they are goalies. Who are they?
Tony Esposito and Glenn Hall.
You got it. 1997, the New York, Minnesota franchise announced the 6-team name finalists. The name winner is the Wild. I want to know about 3 of the other names they think they would like to get.
The North Stars.
Yep. The North Star, no.
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 God, I don't know. What else? I'm trying to think. Did they have Sasquatch?
No. So one is really popular because they play in USPHL, the Blue Ox.
The Blue Hawks?
Blue Ox, OX. They are owned by
Blue Ox.
Yeah, they are owned by Bruce Goodrow. Then the Freeze. Then
we're gonna go with the Freeze too. That's another,
the Northern Lights.
Why?
Another one I don't understand that one. The White Bears, and then finally the Voyageurs.
Well, thank God they went with the Wild.
Yep.
People were mad about the Wild. They weren't happy.
1997, he faced only 18 shots by the Atlanta Flame to earn the shutout. Goalie from the Philadelphia Flyers. 1997. Who is he?
So what was the question?
He got a shutout and with only 18 shots against him in 1977 for the Philadelphia Flyers. Who is
77?
Yep.
Bernie Perron?
Bernie Perron. Bernard Perron pour les Français.
So good.
He was one of the best, right?
Still a nice man. We should get him on here.
I agree with you about that one there. So that's the end, my friend, of the NHL flashback.
So that was NBC? Is that what that was?
NBC, yeah.
I never watched that.
And me too. It's a Wednesday night, so it's like, like Montreal and Canada Saturday night, and now we have Wednesday night. So it's just like, it's rare. That kind of music is really rare. So it's like, funny to add that or programs called NHL Flashback. And this we just thanks one of my friends gave me all those information about that. So thank you so much.
Good job.
And today we're going to talk about. By the way, I want to give you a story about happening yesterday about me. It'll be a 30-second. I'm going to get maybe a couple shut down here, but I want to let you know what happening. I have a practice with my team, U18 AA, and they was not very good at the beginning. And I skate them for 40 minutes. And they did suicide for 40 minutes.
What?
So we still have 20 minutes to go. So I bring them in the middle of the ice. I said, you're going to the locker room right now, put your running shoes, don't take your equipment, and we're going to run outside for another 30 minutes.
Were you mad at them, or what'd they do?
Yeah, that was a little bit mad to them.
Lazy.
So they run outside with a helmet, a glove, a full equipment.
You're gonna be in mommy jail. This is where you find out how good your parent group really is or not, or your organization.
It was all great. And when I came back to the locker room, all the, the director hockey, a couple of other coaches was there. They was just laughing about that one. And I tell a story because one of my directors is Peter Worrell.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, man. Peter was tough, man. He had no.
He told me a couple of stories what happening when he played in junior Quebec.
He's a monster too, isn't he? Like 6'7"?
He's 6'6", man. He's now like 320.
Oh my god, dude! We got to get him running. He's a big man. He was like, he was such a tough player. He was so tough. He played in the Quebec League.
He became a great coach for the youth program. This year,
that's awesome.
He's always been around in Florida. And the last year, he went to coach Alabama.
Oh, really?
Yep. And
Southern Professional League.
Yeah, I'm talking about Alabama. The Alabama Owensville have a hockey players in Nashville, or someone tried to bring that team on the day one.
Is that the NCAA program?
Yeah, they tried to build a ring, and someone. So you have the Nashville Predator plus one player. I'm not remember. I read this like a couple of days ago. Want to increase and build that building, and then put a team on the day one. So, but again, I forgot the name of the players was involved. I think he played there, like whatever it is. So I'm not remembering. So if I find it, I will let you know. But today we'll talk about the San Jose Sharks, and it will be very interesting to see what you have to say about them. I think Doug Wilson and this organization is a little bit different. Of course, we know the injury happening to them, but I can't wait to hear more about the Sharks.
Yeah, so I mean, we know the big thing about this team was they signed the big Erik Karlsson contract, and then as a result of that, I would say they lost a lot of depth players, including guys like Justin Braun. They eventually moved Barclay Goodrow. They lost Donskoy and a few other players like that, and then we saw their big three that they were relying on, which is Couture, Hertl, and Meier, and Karlsson, actually. So really the big four all have significant injury time missed. And this resulted them in being like a bottom third team. Like they didn't make the playoffs. I think they finished third last, right? So they had real struggles in goal again with Martin Jones and Aaron Dell. So this was, a real struggle year. The unfortunate thing is they had traded away that first pick to Ottawa in the Karlsson trade. So Ottawa scores and gets some redemption in that they get basically another lottery pick. So Ottawa, we know, had 2 lottery picks, ends up picking Tim Stützle which I think will be an absolute excellent number one center for them, and defenseman Jake Sanderson instead of just one of those guys. So it worked out very well for Ottawa. Karlsson looked very old last year when he did play, and we know he had the significant injury. He was a minus 15. A lot of money tied up in him at 10.5. So it remains a bit of a concern. We see in this offseason last year, first of all, they brought back Thornton, then they brought back Marleau, trying to go back to the future. They've done it again by bringing back Marleau, but Thornton moves on. Kevin Labanc, though, last year banked on himself, and he took a $1 million contract after a great season. And we said at the time there would probably be a deal as a result of that he was guaranteed. And we saw he signed probably a richer contract than we would normally expect for him. So I think they make it up to him a little bit over getting a 3-year contract. And he's a good top 6 forward for them. We know he can play on the power play. He's an underrated player that can contribute offensively, playmaker first. So it works out for Kevin Labanc. But it's a real bomb in the middle of their salary cap that we'll see, having that extra money on the books this year. We see that Thornton, we know already last year, Dillon, Goodrow, Donskoy, all on the move. There was one other player I was thinking of that was also out. I'm blanking on the name, but this year in the offseason, we see they re-signed Marleau for a favorable contract. I'm not really sure what he's going to bring at this point. He's a player that I've never been a huge fan of. He's a very gentlemanly guy. He's a good person in the locker room. He's a good person overall, good for the young guys. But he's always been a bit of a soft guy. So he, on the ice, will score the goals he's going to score. And now he's not going to score 25, 30 goals. So they're probably looking at him a third, fourth line role. Now they bring in Ryan Donato, which is an interesting move. Donato should be able to score a little bit for them, can play center, can play wing. They sign a guy like Stefan Noesen, who was originally a high draft pick and had injury problems early in his career, but we've seen him in limited action, and he's an effective NHL player. So it's actually a pretty shrewd move. They bring back Matt Nieto from Colorado, which I was a little bit surprised that Colorado didn't keep him, but I guess they have too much depth. I mean, Nieto is an effective, quick forward that can score a little bit when he needs to. The real story, again, was the injuries. These guys need to be healthy. We still know Hertl is still dealing with issues. We don't know about the other 3, so it's going to be very important that they get them back healthy because they've banked everything, and they can't have 4-star players out. It just doesn't work for anybody. The NHL is just too tight. Now, the other player that I forgot to put on here that is in is Devan Dubnyk.
I think the one you forgot of the out was Pavelski.
Well, that's a good point because that was a massive loss. And we saw how effective and how important Pavelski was in Dallas. They just didn't feel they could pay him the money he wanted. He was unwilling to sacrifice and go down to $1 or $2 million. We saw in the playoffs last year with Dallas, he led them to the Stanley Cup final. I think no other player on that team showed the leadership and consistency. Yep. He showed why, they desperately missed him. He was their captain.
I'll be honest with you, Michael. The reason I believe Dallas go all the way that way, he was maybe the one with bring that team at that level. We could have been in the net. I think Pavelski was maybe the best player with Jimmy Benn on the forward. He played so amazing for more what people was expect. That's maybe the best way I can express this.
Yeah, and I think that they paid for it. I mean, they had a horrible year, and they basically blow a whole season. I think if you had Pavelski on your lineup, which I don't know how that would have worked, but you probably wouldn't have had Marleau or Thornton. He would have had a much bigger impact last year. If they had signed Karlsson to a $9 million deal and kept Pavelski and got rid of those other 2, it would have been night and day for this team, even with the injuries, because we see, he makes everyone around him better, and he's such a great leader. His game is not predicated upon speed. It's not predicated on being super skilled. It's based on smarts, and that was a huge, huge loss. So thank you for bringing that up because I kind of blanked on that. So we see, if we look at the scoring with this team, it is a story of injuries. We lost a little bit for Kane. Burns is consistent. Meier's consistent. 56 games, 52 games, 48 games, really detrimental to this club. They moved Barclay Goodrow to Tampa, where he wins a cup. Marleau comes in after being bought out, bought out. He gets 10 goals, so he can still score a litle bit. And he's a good player in the room, but, probably would have rather had Pavelski, but not that would have prevented it. Brendan Dillon moves on. He signs a good contract in Washington, I think. Did he stay in Washington? No. Where did Brendan – he played in Washington last year, right?
Well, you just signed a contract with Washington.
He did. Okay, he re-signed in Washington. So
that's about the goal. They finished 28 in the NHL last season.
Yeah, that's the goaltending was just rough. I mean, for Marc-Edouard Vlasic is interesting because he's been minus for a number of years and he's not really producing offensively. And then you lose a good defenseman who's a top four like Dillon. That's tough to deal with. And you already lost Karlsson, so they didn't really have the depth. They had lost Justin Braun previously, so it was really challenging for them to overcome all those injuries. The Noesen move is, he's an effective forward. You can see even in 34 games for them, he had 6 goals. So, he's an effective third, fourth line guy for them. Jacob Middleton got a little bit of cup of tea, and you've got to think he's a big defenseman, kind of like a 5'6". That'll help this year with a little bit more maturity. Radim Simic signs a pretty sizable contract, Pierre. This guy signed for 2.5. So they're pegging him as a top 4 role. Mario Ferraro, who we saw in the summer camp, he's got skating and skill. He's not that big. So they're counting on him for being at 5'6". It's interesting. Like they probably have some challenges there if everybody's not healthy. Trevor Carrick. Oh, that's cool. He got 3 games. I don't know if he'll get to keep playing. We had Trevor as a call-up for one of the teams that I was GM of once. So Martin Jones, we know, had a rough year. Aaron Dell had a little bit better year, but in the end, definitely not the goaltending you would need to deal with the injuries that happened. If we look at
they have 3.00 as an average game, and they finished 27 in the NHL.
Can't do that, you've got to be 2-5 or you're not in the playoffs. Unless you have a lot of goals. But even then, we know that runs out. Unless you're Toronto. Toronto gets in the playoffs, but then we see what happens. They go up against a team that, has a good goalie or battens down the hatches a little bit, or, it's a toss-up. So it doesn't work like that style of game. So they moved out Pete DeBoer, but I don't think it was Pete DeBoer's problem. Pete DeBoer gets a real good job going to Vegas.
Yeah.
So Pete DeBoer and Steve Spott go to Vegas, and they do very well there. So, I think it was probably a good move for them in the end, as upsetting as it might have been at the time. So if we look at this lineup, though, we see they're structured actually not too bad. Like $8 million to Couture, $7 million to Kane, $6 million, and for extended contracts, Timo Meier and Thomas Hertl at 5'6". So those players get pretty reasonable money. And then on the cap, Kevin Labanc gets 4.7, which is actually not too bad. Like I think he had 17 goals last year. He's typically more of a playmaker, although his assists were way off. But I think that's a reflection that he had to create his own shot a lot, which is not a Kevin Labanc thing. Kevin Labanc is normally a player that sets up other players. So, you can see when you lose pieces on your lineup and you're forced to compensate, and especially if you're a pass-first player, there's no one to pass to. We see, though, Ryan Donato at 1.9, what he's capable of, he could score 20 goals, but I think more realistically, he's like a 12, 15 goal scorer. So 1.9 is reasonable before they have to decide if they're going to re-sign him or not. And I think this is an important year for Donato, so he's got to carve out a role to stick. Noesen at 9.25 is pretty good. We see he's probably capable of getting some goals, and he's a good, physical player. Marcus Sorensen at 1.5 is going to be UFA. So you see they've got some depth now that they kind of lost before, like bringing in Nieto. We know Dylan Gambrell is effective in the role. The guy with some upside here that you see is Noah Gregor. And then the guy that I didn't talk about but I listed here, in addition to Noah, was Joachim Blichfeld. He's a Denmark-born player. He played for the Portland Winterhawks. He led the WHL in scoring by a lot, and he had a very good first year in the AHL. And if you watched him, I watched him in the West Coast rookie tournament last year, and he's dangerous. He has great hands. His skating might be a little bit heavy. He's 6'2". He's kind of 200 pounds, but man, he's skilled and he's smart. So I don't know. You look at him, you go, there's no reason this guy should not be able to play in a top 2 line role in the NHL. So I got to think sooner than later he's going to break through on this club. Now there's a lot of depth. If they have any injuries, this guy can help. So they got some players in the system. And they're not too poorly structured overall, aside from this gross 11.5 number. They've got what, 19.5, 26.5 million between 3 guys on.
That's the killer there, because what happening there, Karlsson, if Karlsson played the level play, I would get it, right? But the problem is going to be 37 when he's done. The problem is more about McEdouard, because he's 33 right now. He's going to be 38, 39 at the end of the contract, and he's going to be $7 million. I think that's a bad. I also have a no MC on his contract. I think that's the one.
Not a young man either. Like, he's 35.
And Burst have 8 million. Is 35. So he's going to be 37, 8, 9, 40 at the end of his contract. So you talk about management your contract. That's what they kill themselves. So they cannot afford any players forward over $8 million. That's what they're going to struggle for a couple of years. Because they cannot handle this for the rest of their life with that part over there. That's why the goalie cannot get on a goalie at $7, $8, $9 million.
Well, I mean, you look at 5.7, you're right. Because Martin Jones is definitely not where he's got 4 more years at 5.7. He's a sub 900 save percentage and 3 goals against per game. That does not work. And he struggled a lot. Devin Dubnyk didn't have a great year last year. He's a lot more reasonable at 2.1 after being moved on. But I think he's old now. He's not young. Like, he's 34. So they really need to figure this out. Like, they're kind of like, if this doesn't work again a second year in a row, I don't know what you do. Like, you've got to think about, do you move a Marc-Edouard Vlasic? You blow out the goalies. You buy out a Martin Jones. Like, they're going to have some tough decisions.
Yeah, of course. Honestly, they will have to. Again,
do they eat salary and move an Erik Karlsson? Do they retain 40% and then move him? It's going to be really interesting to see what they have to do. And they leverage the future. They could have had a Stützle. They could have had a Jake Sanderson type player. I can't remember which pick was theirs. Was their pick the Stützle pick?
I don't remember.
Let's look here. Yeah, so it's a little concerning. They're not totally dire. Like, if their guys are healthy, then they're in pretty good shape. But if they're not, that's real tough. So let's see. Draft picks. Yep. So the Stützle pick was their pick. So they could have had a Tim Stützle who, conceivably could step in and play. Like, tough year and maybe a tough road forward. If they're going to have to make some decisions at some point. You don't mind them on forward. Like, they're pretty young. The ages are pretty good, and the contracts are fairly reasonable. Although it's funny that Couture is 31. Wow. Or Couture is 31. That went fast. I remember when he was in junior.
Yeah.
Jeez. If you look at young guys, we know this is a good story about Ozzy Wiesblatt. His mother's deaf, and Doug Wilson Jr. signing his name when they picked him. So that was pretty neat. If you look, I don't know, like the best to me is Blichfeld. Like, that guy's got real potential. Jake McGrew's is pretty good, but I don't really earmark him for anything. I think right now it's Noah Gregor and Blichfeld who could have the biggest impact on that lineup. And if they do what they're capable of, you would have a very good third line. The defense has got to be healthy, So it's interesting. People move in space still, despite all of that, don't they, Pierre?
The last 5 years in the draft, the only one picked 200 game is Timo Meier.
Wow.
And in 2015, the rest, nobody play over 60 game.
Wow.
In NHL.
Wow.
So that'll give you an idea right there. It could happen. And then after that, you have to go the 2014, and they are lucky. They got Kevin Labanc.
Yep.
And he was a round number 6.
So you can see, I think they've done a good job drafting. So to your point, like 2015, they had Meier. We know Goldobin's moved on, but he was reasonably good. Mirko Mueller is still kind of hanging on, former Everett Silvertip. Hertl worked out very well. Nieto's serviceable. They had traded their first pick. It's interesting. Look at this. They had Sean Corrali, who ended up in Boston, right? So he's playing. Dylan DeMello, they used in a trade. We know Colin Blackwell's playing in the NHL a little bit. So they have good – it's interesting. They get good depth players. Chris Tierney's playing in the NHL. So they do a very good job developing players and picking guys that can make it. Look at Kevin Labanc, like a 6th-round pick, like you said. That's crazy.
Yep.
So that's a little while ago. Then we look at Dillon Gambrell. We know it was a 2nd-round pick. Noah Gregor was a 4th-round pick, and both those guys will play. And then a 7th-round pick with Blichfeld. That 2016 draft could really pay off. They could have 3 guys on the roster this year that are all impactful in some way or another, and they didn't even have a 1st-round pick. So they do a pretty good job evaluating talent. This draft, we see the same again. Like Josh Norris has moved on. He'll play probably a top 9 role in Ottawa. So he's a good player. Mario Ferraro, we saw make the jump and played 60 games last year. Ryan Merkley, I think did he move on, or is he? No, he's the defenseman. We know Ryan Merkley's super talented.
Yep.
But there is a lot of issues off ice with him. And it was definitely a concern. So they took a gamble on taking a very talented player. But if you watched him in the rookie tournament, the West Coast one against the Ducks and everyone last year, he's very talented. He's as talented as any defenseman out of that draft that I saw. So if he can get his personal conduct under control, then, man, he's a very good player.
Yeah. But still, I think, the fact they trade Karlsson for 3 picks hurt them. I think the first good draft pick right now, it's for the last 4 years. It's this year with Bordelot and West Black. Otherwise, they have nothing in 19. They have nothing in 18. They are not there yet. Karlsson and Merkley is not there in an NHL. And then before that,
well, I think again, it's this draft. They'll take some time. Like he's made it. They traded him. He'll probably play somewhere. But I think in the end, you're right. Like Merkley's gonna pop through at some point. He's just too good not to. Blichfeld, damn good player. Gregor, damn good player. Like those guys are gonna be offensive players in the NHL, I think. So that'll pan out. And we know Dylan Gambrell's already made the NHL, just in a different role. But you're right. Like I think if we look at how they develop players, it just takes time. So you have to think some of these guys will pan out, but it's not like obvious to us yet.
Yep.
The one thing, so I kind of did the voodoo math on the lines. If this is how you project the lines, they're really, really, really going to have to be healthy. If they are, then you could potentially get more goals from Meier, Hertl, and Couture, and that's where you got to get it. If not, they're going to struggle. Donato maybe could help out, but they need these guys to be healthy. They just don't have. Now, again, I'm not projecting 2 guys, which is Gregor. Well, I am projecting Gregor, but Blichfeld. Blichfeld could absolutely have an impact. He could be a guy that steps in and be a 20-goal scorer in the NHL. He's a very good playmaker too. He really sees the ice very well, and he's big. He's not super fast, but he's smart, and he's not going to have any problem with the skating part. He's probably like just a little bit above average skating, but the rest of his game is very, very good. So that's where I think that they have potentially some luck there. And then does a Merkley get ice time because of this? Does he suddenly become part of the equation? Because offensively, you don't really even look at Karlsson as being able to score anymore. Like the guy had like 5 or 6 goals last year. Like if you look at Karlsson's numbers, he's not an $11 million player. He had 6 goals.
Yeah.
And then, we've got Brent Burns getting 12, which is good, but it's not, not at a minus 22, obviously. So it's a little bit of a concern. I pegged him at 12 and him at 7. You don't expect a lot of goals from even Vlasic. Do you have like 1 or 2 goals last year?
Yep.
Geez, he had 5 goals, right? So it's $7 million. It's rough, man.
He's not for his offensive side. He's not there for defensive. He have a bad year. So
Well,
it's
that's the problem. He's not getting younger, though, is he?
now you look at your number, right? You're 215 versus 253. I think they wouldn't barely make the 200. Be honest with you,
Not gonna.
and I believe we're going to give more goals at 253. 253 is about 240. Yeah, about there.
It's rough, man.
But
They
again,
really
the lineup, defensive, they have three good defensemen, and they have to get their best. And look at the top six. You talk about one player is not like a great top six there, and then the bottom six over there.
It's
They
rough.
don't have, Nieto is pretty there, but they are not strong there. Sorensen is good. Tornado will be good. Marlowe is 42, so he's not going to score more what you see on the board. And the fourth line is no and Son, but again, so they are really a team and two goalies where it's questionable. So this is the one to make the playoff. I put them on 27, 28, 39 at the end of the bottom 5 on the NHL.
Yep.
And they're going to be hurt for the next 3-4 years because of the contract situation with Karlsson, Burns, and Vlasic. And that's the reason why they lose Pavelski.
Oh, totally.
So that'll give you an idea sometimes. You don't think it's sad to say that because Wilson did a good job prior to that part, but
sure,
you make 1 or 2 mistakes and
it's
you put
like
at the end.
It's so hard, it's definitely difficult, but it's almost like now because the teams are so young and guys are bringing in younger guys and the skill level is so high of young guys, it almost like any investment you make in older players is really dangerous. You look at Chicago, they have 2 guys that are still in the prime. So they have 2 $10 million players. They can't get a sniff of the playoffs practically. Like they can only get in because it's expanded. And then they have to move out the pieces that made them win a round. Like they move out Crawford, and this is the same thing. Like, okay, well, one guy doesn't perform for 2 years, Martin Jones, and you're in trouble.
And of course, after that, you can talk like this. You're talking about Florida. It's easy to talk about everything is done, right? But you think about Florida, where is it Panarin or Bobrovsky? Now, it's easy to see that because this year, Bob had a difficult year, and then Panarin scored 35 goals. You have 95 points, I believe, 97 points. So it's easy to see that. But again, it's what you figure out that part and what you need. I believe me, in NHL, it's good to have a great goalie, but it's not good to pay a goalie over $10 million versus you can find a players, it can bring you 95 points more, about $9-10 million per year.
Yeah.
And then same thing with defensemen. You cannot give a lot of money, $11 more, $9 million defenseman because nobody's going to become an 80-point in NHL as a defenseman.
Nope.
Could you have 1, 2 slept like this, right? But you
need them to join the play without getting burned, and that's not what happens.
And the best GM is the one is not attached to the players. When the players reach 30 years old, let it go. Whatever everybody did to your team, if they want looking for 9-10 million or 5-6 million, let them go.
Or just be loyal to them when they're younger.
I really believe if you GM in NHL, it's a 3 years gap.
Every time.
Every 3 years, rebuild. You get that gap, you make maybe the top 10, didn't make you didn't win them. The next 3, we figure out something else. So we'll see what happens. You have different team have a good direction. You can see that part. You more we do team like that, that's where you find a team where they get there. So we're very interesting.
You don't want to be giving guys retirement packages.
So it's very interesting to see that. That's what we did. If you did not know, I just want to mention I did last night the NHL calendar for next season with division. You have a chance to check on Hockey Nation live show. I did that last night. It was I predict 60 game in NHL, 4 division or 5 division, 1 division for both option on the Canada division only. And then I did 3 division and 4 division on USA 8 per division or 6 per division. And that's my prediction.
Yep, I got to jump here. We're over.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Have a great weekend, everybody. Look forward to see you Monday, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. Enjoy your weekend.